Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is End Times Friday, and we're in part 3 now with Eric Sirkin, who is Denny Weinberg's good lifelong friend who lives in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv. It's interesting that you said you can go out on your porch and see demonstrations. It's kind of interesting. And we've talked about the source of news and the importance of information and how they get it, and the IDF, how they are able to know things that are really remarkable. We talked, one thing you made a statement last time, that the definition of the right and the left politically isn't really about typical cultural things or even economic things. It's related to how they view the Palestinians and their occupation in Israel and around Israel and the attacks from them. It's really defined by that. We know that in our country, we do have political positions, and that particularly on Israel, the left, a lot of the left, what we would call the left would be, well, we want you to have a two-state solution, which, by the way, they don't even know what that means. And then the right would say, well, no, we support Israel. So, Denny, I think you had some thoughts about how to ask the right question to have us, understand Eric's understanding of support and the Jewish understanding of support from America. How do they view America, particularly the fact that the Christians are supporting Israel and trying to help people return to Israel, etc.?
Yeah, I'd just say as an American Jew, for me, and we've talked about this, I have experienced far more interest and political a concern from evangelical Christians, those that are in the community that I spend most of my time with, than my family and those that I grew up with who identify as American Jews. And I think I find that as a curiosity, but I think the question I was putting to Eric is, as an Israeli, how do you experience that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to have to talk about the United States and Israel. So let me start with the United States, if you don't mind. It's my view of it. Okay. The Jewish population in the United States is dynamic, and it's dynamically changing all the time. As you might guess, the Orthodox families in the United States have more children. And therefore, as a percentage of the Jewish population in the United States, as a percentage, it is growing it is growing. Mm. In fact, interestingly enough, I read where I think it was 2 days ago, soon after Harris was announced as being the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party. This is right after they announced the vice president. Being Waltz from Minnesota. They took some poll in New York, and they found that over half the Jews in the state of New York were intending to vote Republican. Okay, and I believe, although I didn't see all the data, I believe if they correlate that with religious observance, they will find a one-to-one correlation between being Orthodox and voting Republican and not. Okay, so the Jewish population is changing. And in fact, years ago I heard this statement made that the existence of the liberal New York Jew is a dying entity. Okay, and what that's meant to imply is that this community of very secular Jews who are politically very active in promoting social causes is a diminishing phenomenon. in terms of population. I don't know if that's true or not. When I go back home in St. Louis, I think it's far from the truth, but what do I know? When I see my family, so as I said, it's very difficult for me to have political discussions with my family. So, from an Israeli perspective, we watch what happens in the United States is of incredible importance to Israelis, and everybody here knows it. And everybody, when you look at our news feeds, like on the Hebrew press, they talk about what goes on in the United States. Today Kamala Harris, nominated blah and blah, such for the vice president. People pay attention to what's going on, and I don't think that's just Israel. That's all over the world, because what happens in the United States impacts so many countries around the world. It's very important for people to be tracking what's going on and so on from their own personal interests. That being said, people here know that that both from a diplomatic perspective and from an armaments perspective, so on, that support the United States is critical and has been critical for the Jewish state. I should also add that people here take a very long-term view of history and time. So if you're in a conversation with an Israeli, they'll say, well, the times of King David and King Solomon, they were negotiating between the Sumerians and the Egyptians. We were dealing with superpowers then too.
Yeah.
and it's true. Or in the time of King Herod, we were dealing with the Romans, and we had to deal with this. And the population has just never been big enough to be a superpower in its own right. So this Jewish state has always been mitigating between superpowers somewhere in the world, and these days that's the United States. So let me. I hope this is related.
No, that's good.
I've been chairman of the board of an organization called the Lone Soldier Center here in Israel, and recently Senator John Fetterman came to Israel, and I got a call from the U.S. Embassy, as I sometimes do. They asked me, "Can you guys host him because he wants to visit with soldiers while he's here?" This was maybe a month ago, so we arranged it. It was great. So we're at this meeting, and I was speaking. They were asking me to give some few comments at the beginning, and I turned to Senator Fetterman, and I said, "Senator Fetterman, I'm going to say to you something you may not hear very often, but it's important for you to hear. As much as we go to sleep at night worrying about the future of our country here, we equally worry about the future of the United States. Because a world without the United States as the superpower is going to be a very different world. And I don't think, if you imagine what it would be like to have Russia or China, the superpower, this would be a very different world. And those morons demonstrating on Harvard campus, talking about Intifada now and whatever, they'd be put in prison or dead. Okay, so it would be a very different world. So we need you, Senator Fetterman, to not only help us, but to help yourselves, help the United States, maintain its role as the leader of free nations, because without that, we're all screwed. Sorry about my English. So I think he understood. So that we all understand these concepts here, okay? And we all worry when we start seeing signs that the United States is sort of receding. Quite honestly, when President Biden came here that first week of the war, we all saw a man speaking from his heart. Whether you like him, you don't like him, you like his policy, you don't like, doesn't matter. That guy came here and told us from his heart that he was with us. And there was really crying. We got it. Of course, things changed over time, for a combination of reasons in the United States. But, soon afterwards, he sent over a bunch of generals who served in Afghanistan and Iraq, giving us advice. And luckily, the Army IDF said, okay, we got it, and then chose to ignore most of it. Because I'm not saying, I do worry about the U.S. military, and I do worry about its effectiveness in the world today compared to what it used to be. But more importantly, those generals transposed their experiences, which were only partially relevant to what is relevant here in Israel. Hamas is not an organization 20,000 miles or 15,000 miles away from us. They're they're 100 meters away across the border from us. We can't just walk away one day, pull up our airplane, go to the tarmac, evacuate all of our citizens, and call it a day.
Yeah.
We can't do that here like the United States does.
Yeah.
Okay. We have to live with this for a long, long, long time. So when they say, "Oh, you need a day after plan that's going to bring peace," come on. From an Israeli perspective, peace. There's never been peace in this region. Okay. Are we going to bring peace tomorrow with the way you define the United States, where you have a treaty that lasts hundreds of years? No, that doesn't happen in this part of the world. In the Middle East, there's no such thing. The Arabic word for there's no such thing as peace. I don't mean peace. I mean they call the term they use is hudna, and hudna means a temporary ceasefire. There's no such thing as a permanent ceasefire. There's a ceasefire until you're stronger than your enemy, and then you fight again. That's kind of how things work over here. We're laughing, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
So we don't see ourselves evacuating out of Gaza, completely, 100%. We tried that; it didn't work. So we're not going to try that again. So for the United States to be sending people over here and telling us what we should or shouldn't be doing, we appreciate your advice, United States, and we appreciate very much your diplomatic support and everything else you're doing. But pretty soon we're going to be giving you advice, I think, on how to deal with urban warfare. Okay, so coming back now, circling back to how we view the United States. Everybody here knows that we're critically dependent upon the United States, and more we're trying to be less dependent on the United States for a combination of reasons. Okay, we just the Patriot missiles, which were sent to, I think we bought in the United States years ago during the second year Iraq War. No, first year Iraq War. The United States fought against Saddam Hussein. The United States sent them to us to protect against the Scud missiles, which they didn't do a very good job. We now have our own missiles, Arrow, that are doing much better jobs. So I think the Patriots are probably going to go to Ukraine soon. So we're trying to make ourselves as much as possible more and more independent as we can of the United States. I don't think there'll ever be a time where diplomatically or we'll find ourselves on the other side of the aisle from the United States, because the values are too much aligned. The visions of how society should exist, the Republican democracies that exist are similar in both places. And so those ideals aren't just going to evaporate and go away. We're not going to go be knocking on the door of China one day and say, let's shake hands and and you guys can help us. But that's just never going to happen. Yeah, we'll have commercial ties with China, but it'll never be the same kind of relationship. So what happens in the United States is very important. And of course, the support for Israel in the United States comes from many different directions. And one, of course, is from the Jewish community. And there it's not always 100% aligned with what we think should be the Jewish communities. That's not true, by the way, in other communities outside the United States. It's purely a U.S. phenomenon, by the way, in the Jewish community. You don't see that in France or in the UK. So and of course from the evangelical community.
So let me stop you. Let me stop you 1 second there. So you said France and UK, etc. So the Jewish communities in those countries are really very supportive of the typical Jewish, let's say, desires for how they want to function, as opposed to America, that we're kind of divided on that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think that's true. And also, for example, in most of the European countries, the Jewish community is there, and I think largely in South America as well. I'm not so familiar with the South American Jewish communities. It's mostly an Orthodox community. Okay, and maybe they don't go to the synagogue, or they aren't strictly kosher, but there's no Reformed temple. Now, in the UK, you will find a few. Okay, but mostly people they'll say I'm Jewish. Okay, and yeah, maybe I don't observe Shabbat, or I'm not as kosher as or I'll eat out. My wife likes to joke, people who keep kosher, but when they go out for a meal, they don't. She's what they call modern Orthodox, so she's strictly kosher. So she sort of pokes fun at that.
Yeah.
But So outside the United States, this phenomenon is very different. So it's really a unique. But of course, the largest Jewish community outside of Israel is in the United States.
Yep. Yep.
Which, by the way, is also a very interesting phenomenon if you think about it. In Israel, the population is going up by roughly 2.5% year to year. We're now seeing roughly 10 million. In about 5 more years, if the current trends continue, today we're the largest Jewish community in the world, larger than the United States. In 5 years, you can say the majority of Jews in the world live in Israel.
Yep.
And I think that's going to change a lot if you think that through and what that means, which the American Jewish community has not thought through that implication. But when you think it through, I think it's going to have a lot of profound implications on the U.S. Jewish community.
Yep.
So again, coming back, we see a lot of support amongst the Jewish community, and of course, a large segment of the evangelical community. And my wife and I know several organizations here that work together closely with various evangelical organizations in the United States, helping in various capacities. I have very dear friends, not Denny in this case, but from my days at UC Berkeley, who are evangelical. I need to tell them about this broadcast, so I'm not sure they're on your network or not. Yeah. And they came to visit during the we call Sukkot here. It was the week of I forget what they called it. So they came and they participated. Many evangelicals come during this period of the week, Sukkot, and the Feast of Tabernacles, I think is what it's called.
Booths.
Yeah. And so I was a tour guide. I was taking them in various churches in the old city, and they had a great time. So I'm a bit familiar with the community. So many Israelis don't understand the community, I would say, but there are pockets here that do and understand. And certainly within the political infrastructure, people do understand the importance and the role of the evangelical community in the United States. By the way, let me give you something that I think your listeners will love to hear. Okay, it's a story. People love stories. So about a year and a half ago, my wife comes to me. I'm sitting here at my computer working away. She says, "My dear friend Carolyn just invited me to hear a talk in the biggest auditorium in Israel here in Jerusalem." And I said, "So who's talking?" Ben Shapiro. People may know. Okay. So I said, "Well, I don't know. I know. I listen to what he says online. I don't know if I'm going to go hear him." So I go online. She tells me about this event. I go online and I see Jordan Peterson is talking. I said, "Oh, okay, I'm coming. I got to come. So I then called 3 of my friends. In fact, one of my closest friends here is actually from Belgium, and we're sailing buddies. I sail a lot on the Mediterranean, and I said, "You've got to come," even though he's a little politically to the left. So he came to it because he wanted to hear it. So I walked in this auditorium, maybe seating, I would guess 6,000 people, roughly, large. And I expected to see a bunch of what you say in Yiddish, Alterkalkers, people like me in their 60s and 70s, mostly English speaking, coming to hear Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. And I was dead wrong. The average age had to be 28. Mm-hmm. They were all speaking Hebrew. They were all Israelis. And here, among the observant Jews, Jordan Peterson is a rock star. Okay, I mean it. I mean, they were giving him standing ovations. I mean, and Ben Shapiro also, but Jordan Peterson was the main act here. And I turned to my wife at the end of that event. We went up for coffee with her friends. I said, "I have a lot of faith in this next generation." And that makes me feel like, and so it's just a story that maybe your listeners would like to hear, because it's true. People here understand the importance of faith in dictating the values of society, which was one of the main things that Jordan Peterson talks about. And not everybody here, but the vast majority of people, they understand that. They understand that cold.
Yeah. Would the population, let's say, welcome the evangelical input, and are they just neutral toward it, don't care about it, reject it, or are they welcome it? Where the population sit?
I think overall it's welcome. There is a very big sensitive point. there are pockets of Jews for Jesus, or in various parts of the country, who see it as their role to try to convert Jews to Christianity.
Mm.
And this is in most Israelis' minds crossing a red line.
Yeah.
And here's another story. We have the Mormon Center here in Jerusalem. I've been to several times. They have concerts there. And when they wanted to build the Mormon Center here, the government told them, they picked the site, they gave them the permit, and they said, and you can have this as, and have whatever activities you see appropriate. But if we find you trying to convert Jews, we'll come shut you down. And they've been very good citizens, okay, in that regard. And Denny and I have a mutual friend who was very active in the Mormon Church, and he actually was there. Bob was there for a while. So that's the line that if it gets crossed, raises a lot of attention here. Outside of that, people know that a lot of the until we, of course, October 7th, when we had a lot of tourists here, large number, probably the majority, were evangelical and believing Christians from the United States and other parts of the world. And, the country, for a variety of reasons, invests in restoring the site of John the Baptist, where he was baptized in the Jordan River, for example. It needed to be cleaned up because it was dirty for a long time. And all these kinds of sites, Capernaum up in the north, and all these sites where Jesus preached, and so on. By the way, I don't know if your listeners know, but the Hebrew word for Christian in Hebrew is Notzrim. And the reason why it's Notzrim is because Jesus was the rabbi from Nazareth, from Nazareth.
Yep.
So that's where the name comes from.
Oh, cool.
So hopefully I answered your question.
Yep.
I don't know if I didn't. Yeah, you can ask it again.
Yep. No, I got it. And then it sounds like, based on the let's say the culture as well as the nature of the Jewish population, is they don't want to be converted per se. Don't try to persuade me, but they seem to be open to discussion, or at least experiencing what other people think. Is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah. Well, look, we have an ultra Orthodox sector here that's very narrow-minded, and for many reasons, but outside of that sector, people have open minds. They read, they want to understand, how other people believe, and when people go to the Old City, they see the Christian Quarter and the other sections and so on. So I think people here generally understand a lot of the background behind Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say. Okay.
Yeah. Well, sometime, we won't do it now, but maybe we'll have a discussion about Messiah. What the Jewish view of Messiah is, and
I'm not sure I'm qualified for that.
yeah.
I'm not sure I'm the right person for that discussion.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll have other thoughts.
My
about
wife
that.
might be, but not me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Eric, just quickly, are we on the verge of an all-out war?
Just quickly.
Yeah. Hey, by the way.
No, I don't think so. I think that if you define it with Iran, I don't think that there'll be a war with Iran. No, I don't think so. Will there be a war with Hezbollah? Maybe 50-50. If you would ask me maybe 3 weeks ago, maybe there's a higher probability. People here are bracing themselves for the likelihood of war with Hezbollah. But I don't think Iran will, it's not clear what Iran will do. And it's interesting that you mentioned that. And again, if I get off subject, you just steer me right back. But I talk with my daughters frequently, and I was talking with one over the weekend, and she was asking me, well, there's all this, revenge, does it really accomplish anything? I tried to explain to her the importance of deterrence, okay? And why, and sure enough, it was announced yesterday in the press that the new president of Iran, according to the press reports, is working on trying to convince the supreme leader to refrain from doing anything big, okay? And I would argue 100% that the reason, I'm assuming the report is true, the reason is because they saw what the Israeli Air Force did to the port in Yemen. And Israel did that intentionally. They wanted to see a huge fire so everybody, all the eyes in the Arab world could see it. It was by design. So they would understand this is what's going to happen to attack us on a regular basis and hurt our citizens. And you don't think that the Lebanese living in Beirut didn't see that and think to themselves? They did. And so did, I'm sure, people in Iran. And because what we did last time to Iran is the IAF, Israeli Air Force, knocked out a radar system.
Yep.
Totally undetected. You don't think they can do that to their oil port and therefore destroy a lot of their oil trade with China? Of course. If they did it in Yemen, they can do it in Iran. And Iran's worried about it. And this I know for a fact because they requested from Russia their air defense systems because all the armament investments in Iran are offensive weapons. They're not defensive. And so they're very vulnerable to anything the Israelis do from the air. So now they think all of a sudden that Russia's going to help them by giving them some battery of S-400 surface-to-air missiles. The Israeli Air Force has dealt with those missiles before. Maybe there's something new that the Russians have developed that we don't know about, but I'm pretty sure that the Israeli Air Force is familiar with dealing with that.
Yeah.
So now Iran knows that they attack us in a bad way, we're going to take out their oil infrastructure.
Yep.
And guess what? Their economy is going to tank.
Yep. What do you right now predict is going to happen with Lebanon and Hezbollah?
I don't know. I really don't know. We in Israel, we have these 80,000 citizens who are living in hotels, and it's really doesn't sound terrible. They've been living in hotels since October 9th. It's terrible. It's one thing to stay in a nice hotel for a week or two, but to live in it with your kids bouncing off the wall, and supposed to be in school and not missing school, and your business that you had selling falafel in the corner or the supermarket, the business is tanking because you're not there. It's hurting the country and these people tremendously. And they're in the first month of the war, the defense minister and the chief of staff wanted to not bother with Hamas. They just wanted to go right after Hezbollah because that was the real enemy. But Netanyahu and the inbound coalition from Benny Gantz convinced the government not to do that. And of course, Biden did whatever he could to push that. And that's why Biden sent the aircraft carriers here in the first month of the war, because that was his promise to Israel that you don't send troops and we'll do what we can to make sure your population is protected. But now we can't live this way any longer, And now that the activity is starting to reside in Gaza, eyes are turning towards Lebanon.
Yeah.
But the army seems to think that they know how to do this. I don't personally. I don't think the army really knows everything they think they know. Hezbollah is a very effective military organization. They've had a lot of time to plan this out. They have tunnels under Lebanon that make Hamas look like nothing. They have huge tunnels and huge tunnel infrastructure, and they have things up their sleeves that I don't think our army is fully cognizant of. Yeah. Although we have a lot of intelligence. The fact that we could, if the army wanted to, I'm sure that tomorrow they could take out Hassan Nasrallah, just like they took out the Shukri guy, the guy second in command in Hezbollah. Right. They don't for a combination of reasons. So their intelligence is quite good, but I don't think it's 100%.
Yeah. Well, that'll be something to watch, Denny, as we continue looking at this. And Eric, thank you so much for all of this great insight. Thank you that you're able to connect with Denny, who's a regular guest. We would love to schedule again, have you come back, keep helping us understand what's really going on there. It's such a refreshing thing to have somebody that actually knows how it works and to tell us, your best insight, knowing that even sometimes it's not really known, just like with Hezbollah. It's not really known yet. We're just going to have to watch it, So thank you so much. We so appreciate your insight. Thank you for the time you've given us, and we'd love to have you back.
Thank you.
Yep. So
Yeah,
Kathy,
absolutely
we'll
a pleasure.
continue again.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
very much.
Such a pleasure to have you, Eric. Thanks for your insight, your input, and just your willingness truly to give us a perspective we cannot gain. There's no one who can give that to us here, and so it's just great to hear firsthand from someone over there seeing it all.
When Denny asks, I shall obey.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again. And if you have questions from today's broadcast, be sure to send them in to us at questions@abideministries.com. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep. We'll see you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. Send us your questions and comments and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.